What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. A few days ago, Riot Meddler announced that they were considering nerfing Maw of Malmortius and or Hexdrinker in patch 6.7. And so it brings up the idea, do Hexdrinker and Maw of Malmortius deserve a nerf? Also, just a heads up, when this video goes live, I'll be giving away $100 of RP and some Steel Series pieces with some friends, and it's super easy to enter, so just check the link in the description. And if you enjoy the video, hit that like button, and if you don't, please hit that dislike. Anyways, let's get started. Back in patch 5.22, right at the start of the preseason to season 6, was when Maw of Malmortius and Hexdrinker received pretty significant changes, which involved a minor nerf to Hexdrinker, and a rework that was essentially a buff to Maw of Malmortius. Before that change, Hexdrinker was a really strong item and was definitely viable as a pickup for the laning phase or in the mid game, but Maw of Malmortius was actually a bit underrepresented for the most part, as it was a lot less powerful than Hexdrinker in terms of the gold spent to the power gained ratio, so the buff to Maw was arguably deserved at the time, as was the nerf to Hexdrinker. However, after the buff, Maw evolved from this niche late game pickup to a seriously strong option, comparable to Zhonya's almost, for AD champions in the sense that versus AP, you pretty much always pick it up. And with the Hexdrinker component being such a powerful option, it gives you a huge advantage in those matchups, especially for mid laners like Talon and Zed facing AP champions. So based on the history of the two items, it's definitely important to look at them separately, because although Hexdrinker might just be a cheap part to the larger item that is Maw, the fact is that you can pick it up as early as your first back during the laning phase, which means that it can be as much if not more impactful to your situation and your lane. And since the cooldown is 90 seconds only, that almost always results in a situation where if the mage wants to kill a target with Hexdrinker, they have to just power through it, rather than trying to find a time where the cooldown isn't up, since most AP ultimates have a similar or maybe even a longer cooldown than 90 seconds, so there isn't much of a cooldown window to take advantage of. Or you have to find a way to proc it without using your ultimate, which can be pretty tough, and it forces the mage player into a really difficult playstyle to pull off, with the exception of a few champions that have shorter cooldowned ultimates. Now the main thing to understand here is that the way magic damage works is a whole lot different to how attack damage works. Magic damage is almost entirely burst oriented and cooldown based, which means that any shield of some sort is an incredible counter, because if you tank the burst of an AP champion out, you're good to go until their cooldowns come back up, whereas attack damage is able to pump out sustained DPS with auto attacks. So the shield on these items gives you a huge amount of legroom to work with when facing an AP champion, and the raw combat value the item provides is honestly just insane. Being able to tank out the burst of an AP champion, especially in the early game when the mages are just working with their base damages and not that much AP at all, is an extremely powerful effect, and in combo with the magic resistance, Hexdrinker and Maw gives absurd combat effectiveness versus an AP champion. And Hexdrinker is a big reason why AD champions tend to have a lot of strong matchups in the mid lane. As well, the big thing that Maw has over Hexdrinker is the Life Grip passive that grants 25% attack speed, 10% lifesteal, and 10% spell vamp when the shield procs. And that component of the item synergizes incredibly well with the shield since it procs but also comes with the huge boost of survivability. And with that said, remember that both Hexdrinker and Maw are just about 100% gold efficient, so despite providing an incredibly useful ability, they aren't sacrificing that much at all in the stats compartment for it. But at the same time, there's no doubt that Zhonya's is a great item on the flip side that does kind of like the same thing that Maw does but on the opposite end of the spectrum. So Maw and Hexdrinker do have a place in League of Legends, it's just a little bit difficult to measure the power ratios between the two spectrums. And this kind of item hurts certain styles of mages quite a bit. Ever since Season 6 began, mages have taken a fair hit overall as a result of the item changes, as most of the attack damage items were buffed or were given more options, while the mage items remained the same or received nerfs. And because of that, we've seen mostly just the mages with a lot of utility like Lux and Ahri really succeed, while the more damage focused mages have struggled quite a bit. Well, they haven't been thrusted out of the meta, but they're definitely a little bit weaker than they were in Season 5. Nerfing Maw and Hexdrinker would be a buff to pretty much every mid and top lane mage, and even the junglers to some extent too. And because of that, it's a very tricky item to change, since no matter how you change it, it's going to affect a ridiculous amount of champions in the game. Potentially more than any other item in the entire game actually, except for the stuff that everyone builds like boots, wards, and trinkets, since Hexdrinker has a huge effect on both of those building it and on the mages facing it, whereas a lot of items are just affect one or the other. Maw as an item though is one that is probably on a power level that's a little bit higher than Hexdrinker. For starters, Maw of Malmortius has a win rate of around 58%, while Hexdrinker's win rate is just about 50% actually. Now, item win rates are a horrible thing to go off of since they're situational, they don't really mean anything honestly, but the added life grip passive that Maw brings combos with the shield so well to bring an item that accomplishes so much of what Titanic Hydra did before it got nerfed, in that it provides you with a lot of damage, especially when you consider the armor pen, while also bringing you quite a lot of tankiness too. 50 magic resistance is quite a lot, and an item that makes you tanky, gives you some extra survivability while still making you deal tons of damage isn't exactly the most balanced concept for an item in a game. And to top it off, with Hexdrinker, the build path of Maw of Malmortius is honestly fantastic, and the gold efficiency is fine. And honestly, once the passive procs, you're talking like 150-160% gold efficiency worth of stats, which at that point the item just becomes insane. And the shield part ensures that you will live to make use of those stats too. Overall though, I'm not entirely sure if Hexdrinker should be nerfed. I mean, it's a good comparison to Seeker's Arm Guard, and Seeker's Arm Guard is pretty strong, so the two are on a somewhat similar power level at the moment. But Maw of Malmortius is a different story, and probably deserves a minor hit to either the magic resistance or the attack damage. It's hard to justify nerfing any of the passives honestly, because that's likely to hurt the viability of the item quite a bit, since if you hurt the passive shield of either item, or the life grip passive on Maw, those items are just going to do such a worse job of accomplishing their goals of being this awesome dueling item versus an AP champion. But a hit to the passive stats would help out mages in a decent amount in those matchups that honestly are already bad for them regardless of Hexdrinker and Maw for the most part. So at this point, Maw kind of is like what Titanic Hydra was before the nerf. It just gives too much tankiness and damage at the same time, and those two things are really powerful when chalked into just a single item. However, if either Hexdrinker or Maw of Malmortius gets nerfed into unviability, that would be really unfair for the melee champions, who still have to deal with the power of Seeker's Arm Guard and Zhonya's. And it's not a bad interaction honestly when one side has a Maw and the other has a Zhonya's. It's not unfair for either side in terms of mechanics the items bring, and it creates this reasonably skillful interaction, so neither Maw or Hexdrinker deserves a serious nerf. Otherwise that would put the advantage a little bit too much in favor of the AP champions by quite a bit. It's just that at the moment, Maw probably deserves a little bit of a toning down to be a little bit more fair for the AP champs, to make that kind of matchup a little bit more balanced overall. And that's just about it. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.